The jungle was quiet, but Jack could feel something was wrong. The air was thick and the trees moved like they were breathing. He had crashed on this alien moon just hours ago, his escape pod burning behind him. He had no idea what kind of creatures lived here, but the silence didn't feel peaceful, it felt dangerous. He moved carefully, holding a metal rod as a weapon. Every step made a soft crunch under the leaves. Then he heard it. A soft cry, like someone in pain. Not too far from where he stood, he turned quickly and moved toward the sound. His heart beat faster, expecting an animal, a trap, or worse, but what he found froze him in place. There, under the twisted roots of a thick tree, was a girl, an alien girl, small and pale, with strange patterns glowing faintly on her skin. Her leg was swollen and discolored, and black veins ran up from a wound. Her breathing was shaky, shallow, like she was struggling to stay alive. Her eyes met his, wide, frightened but full of pleading. She tried to speak, but her voice was weak and foreign. Her words didn't make sense to him, but he didn't need to understand her language to know what had happened. She had been bitten, and badly. The marks on her leg looked like snake fangs, 2 deep punctures surrounded by bruised skin. He knew that pattern well. The snake must have been fast and venomous, and the poison was already spreading. Jack dropped to his knees beside her. She flinched, at first trying to pull back, but she didn't have the strength. Her body was trembling and she was slipping away. He looked around and saw the cause of her pain. A long, dark snake curled in the shadows nearby. Its eyes glowed faintly, and it hissed as Jack got closer. The snake wasn't done. It was watching, waiting for the girl to stop moving. Maybe, planning to bite again, Jack didn't hesitate. With one quick motion, he picked up a sharp branch and lunged at the snake. It struck at him fast as lightning. He dodged barely and stabbed the branch through its side. The snake thrashed and hissed before going still. Jack was breathing hard, his arms shaking, but he didn't stop. He turned back to the girl. Her eyes were closed now, her skin paler. He touched her cheek gently and she stirred. Barely. She was still alive, but just barely. He had to act fast, or she'd die right there under that tree. He looked at the wound again. The poison was already moving through her veins. He didn't have any medicine, no anti-venom, no first aid kit, just his knowledge and instinct. He took a clean piece of cloth from his pocket and tied it tightly above the bite, trying to stop the poison from moving. Then he did the one thing he never thought he'd have to do. He lowered his head to the wound, opened his mouth, and began to suck the venom out. It tasted bitter, burning his tongue. He spat it out and did it again and again, hoping it would be enough. It was risky. He could get sick too, maybe, even die, but he couldn't let her go, not like this. When he finished, he tore more cloth from his sleeve and wrapped her leg. He lifted her into his arms. She was light, almost weightless. Her head rested against his shoulder and he could feel her warmth fading. He didn't know where to take her, but he had to get away from the jungle floor, away from the predators and insects. He remembered seeing a small rock hill not far from his pod. Maybe it could offer shelter. He walked quickly, carefully, holding her close, whispering to her, though she didn't answer. Her breathing was shallow, almost not there, but he refused to believe she was gone. As he walked, strange noises echoed around him, bird-like calls, clicking sounds, distant howls. But Jack didn't stop. The jungle was alive, and now it knew where he was. He had to move faster. Finally, he reached the rocks and found a small overhang, not much but enough to protect them from the wind and rain. He laid her down gently and covered her with his jacket. She was barely moving now. Her eyes were half open, and tears rolled down the side of her face. He held her hand and said softly, "You'll be okay, I promise." Even if she couldn't understand, he sat beside her all night, keeping the fire going, keeping her warm. He didn't sleep, didn't rest, just watched over her like a silent guardian. The night stretched on forever and the stars above felt cold. He didn't know if she'd survive the night, but he would not leave her alone. Not now. Not after. Everything somewhere deep inside. He felt something strange. A connection. A pull. Not just pity, but something deeper. This girl, this stranger from another world, had become his responsibility. And even if the jungle came for them both, he'd fight it to the end. For her, he would not give up, not now, not ever. The fire crackled softly, giving off little warmth in the cold alien night. Jack sat with his back against the rock, eyes heavy with no sleep. The alien girl lay beside him, her breathing slow and weak. Her skin was still pale, and the veins on her leg were still dark. He had tried everything he could think of, but she wasn't getting better. He checked the bandage again, making sure it was tight, hoping it slowed the poison. She didn't react. Her hand was cold in his, and for a moment, Jack feared she might not wake again. He reached into his pack and found a tiny energy bar, his last one. He didn't eat it himself. Instead, he broke it into small pieces and gently placed one near her mouth. "Come on, just chew," he whispered. Her lips moved slightly, but she was too weak. Jack's heart sank. He had kept her alive, but just barely. If he didn't do something more, she would die here, and soon. He looked out toward the trees, the jungle alive with unknown sounds. The snake that bit her was dead, but Jack knew there could be more. Worse, she wasn't just some girl lost in the woods. Something about the way she looked over her shoulder before fainting, the way she reacted to sounds. It told him she was hiding from something. And now, with her helpless, she couldn't hide anymore. Jack got up and searched the area for anything useful. He found a patch of glowing moss and crushed it to create more light. He wrapped it in cloth and made a small lantern, placing it beside her so he could always see her face. Then, he opened a hidden compartment in his suit, a survival pouch. Inside was an old emergency kit, just a few items, but one caught his eye, a painkiller injector. It wouldn't cure poison, but maybe it could help her rest and slow the fever. He injected it carefully into her upper arm, watching closely. After a few moments, her breathing changed slightly, less ragged, more steady. It was a small sign, but Jack took it as hope. He sat back down beside her and whispered, "You're stronger than this, I know it." A sudden crack from the trees made him freeze. Something or someone was nearby. Jack turned off the glowing moss light and stayed still, his ears strained, trying to pick up movement. A shadow passed through. The trees, tall, fast, not a beast, something else. Jack grabbed the metal rod beside him and waited, his body ready to fight, his mind racing. If they found her, would they kill her? Capture her? And what would they do to him? But the sound faded. The figure moved away, lost in the thick jungle. Jack let out a slow breath and looked back at the girl. Still alive, still fighting. That's when she moved, just a little. Her eyes opened, her lips trembling. She looked straight at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "Tara," she whispered. Her voice was weak, like wind blowing through dry leaves. Jack leaned closer, confused. She pointed to herself. "Tara." Jack nodded slowly, understanding. "Tara, that's your name." She blinked once, slowly, then her fingers gently touched his chest. "You?" she asked. Jack smiled softly. "Jack," he said. She nodded faintly, and her fingers rested over her heart for a moment. She didn't say more, her energy fading again. But now Jack had something. Her name, and a small connection. Hours passed, and the night slowly turned into morning. A soft blue light filled the sky, and strange birds chirped from high in the trees. Jack stood up, stretching his sore back and arms. He had to move her, they couldn't stay there. The jungle was full of things he didn't understand. But one thing he knew, if they stayed still, they'd be hunted. He gently lifted Tara into his arms again, her small body barely reacting. He wrapped her tightly in a blanket and whispered, "Don't give up on me now." With every step, Jack scanned the jungle, looking for a safe place. He remembered passing a thick tree with wide roots when he first landed. Maybe there, he could build a hidden shelter. After walking for what felt like hours, he found the tree, giant and hollow inside, just enough space for them both. He laid Tara down and covered the entrance with vines and branches, hiding them from view. Inside the dark hollow, he placed his jacket under her head and began to set traps outside using string, sharp sticks, and whatever he could find. He didn't want to kill anything, but if danger came close, he needed warning. When he returned, Tara was slightly more alert. Her eyes followed his movement, but she still didn't speak. Jack sat beside her again, holding her hand, whispering stories to her, even though she didn't understand most of it. He told her about Earth, about his dog, about the blue, oceans and food that didn't glow. Then something changed, her eyes focused, and she whispered, "You help Tara?" Jack blinked, surprised. She was trying to speak his language, learning fast. He smiled and nodded. "Yes, I help Tara." She gave him the faintest smile before drifting off again. This time, it wasn't fear that filled Jack's heart. It was something stronger, deeper. He wasn't just keeping her alive now, he was protecting her, watching over her, making sure nothing touched her again. We'd not the snakes, not the shadows, not even the nightmares. As long as Jack was breathing, Tara would be safe. No matter what the jungle threw at them, he wouldn't stop. Not until she could walk again, smile again, and live again. The sun peeked through the jungle leaves, casting soft golden light over the ground. Birds with bright feathers flew between trees, chirping in strange tones. Jack opened his eyes slowly. His back hurt from sleeping on the rough ground. But he didn't care. The first thing he did was look at her. Tara, she was still breathing. Her chest rose and fell gently. Her face was no longer pale and her body wasn't shaking anymore. The fever had dropped just a little, but it was enough to give him hope. He leaned closer and touched her forehead. It was still warm but not burning like before. She stirred at his touch. Her eyes fluttered open, slowly adjusting to the light. Jack sat back, surprised and relieved. Her eyes looked clearer now. Not full of panic like the night before they met his, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. Then her lips parted and she whispered, "Jack." Hearing her say his name made his chest tighten. She remembered. She had listened, even in her pain. He smiled and nodded. "Tara," he said softly. She nodded back, her lips trying to smile but too tired to hold it. She tried to move her body, but her leg wouldn't respond. Her face twisted in pain, and Jack quickly placed his hand on her shoulder. "Easy," he said. "You're safe now." Tara blinked, slowly, and tears filled her eyes. She wasn't crying from pain. It was something deeper, something inside her. Jack didn't understand it fully, but he didn't look away. She reached out her hand and grabbed his wrist, not strongly but with purpose. She pointed to her leg, then to her heart, then shook her head. Her body was weak, but she was trying to say something. He leaned closer, trying to guess her meaning. "The poison," he said quietly. "It's still in you." She nodded slowly. Her eyes then turned to the trees outside the hollow shelter, fear returning to her face. She said a word he didn't understand, but her tone was full of dread. Jack frowned. "What is it? What are you scared of?" She repeated the word, then added another in broken English. "Find me." Jack's heart sank. Someone was looking for her, someone dangerous. He had suspected before, but now it was clear. Tara wasn't just some lost alien girl. She was running, hiding, maybe even hunted. He looked outside again, scanning the trees. Nothing moved, but the jungle never truly slept. He turned back to her. "They won't find you," he promised. "I won't let them." Tara looked at him, her eyes wide and wet. She didn't know what those words meant fully, but she felt their weight. She squeezed his wrist just once, before letting go and resting back on the jacket pillow. Jack knew they couldn't stay here for long. The hollow tree gave them shelter, but it wasn't safe enough. If someone was searching for her, they might already be near. He stepped outside. Moving quietly, he climbed halfway up a tree to get a better view. From there, he could see smoke far in the distance, not from fire, from engines. A ship had landed, and it wasn't his. That was proof. Whoever they were, they had followed her, or maybe they had followed him after he found her. Either way, time was running out. Jack slid back down and returned to Tara. She had closed her eyes, but she was still awake. He crouched beside her and spoke slowly. "We have to move soon. I know you're tired, but we're not safe here." She opened her eyes, trying to speak. Her mouth moved and she said, "Walk." "No." Jack nodded. "I know, I'll carry you." She looked unsure, even scared. She didn't want to slow him down, but Jack had already decided. He wrapped her carefully in the blanket, lifting her like she weighed nothing. She gasped softly, her hand grabbing his shirt as he stood. "Hold on," he said. "I'll be gentle." He stepped out into the light, carrying her through the trees. Each step was careful, every sound making him pause. Tara rested her head against his chest. Her hand held onto him tightly. Even though her body was weak, she was afraid. And Jack could feel it in her grip, but he kept going, whispering softly, "I've got you, you're not alone." As they moved, the jungle opened slightly, revealing a narrow path. Jack followed it, hoping it led to higher ground or maybe a safe place. Birds flew overhead and strange creatures peeked from behind plants. None attacked, but Jack felt watched. They passed a tree with marks on it, deep scratches made by something large. Tara noticed them too. Her breathing sped up. She whispered, "Hunters." Jack didn't stop. He had no idea who these hunters were, but he didn't plan on meeting them. Tara whispered again, "They take girls." Her voice shook as she spoke. Jack's jaw clenched. The jungle wasn't their only enemy. She had escaped something far worse than a snake. Jack adjusted his grip on her and moved faster. His legs burned, but he didn't slow down, not while she clung to him like her life depended on it. Eventually, they found a small cave hidden behind thick vines. Jack checked it carefully before stepping inside. It was cool, quiet, and dry. A place to rest, at least for now. He laid Tara down gently, brushing her hair from her face. Her eyes stayed on him, full of gratitude and worry. He gave her a small sip of water and said, "We'll stay here tonight, but tomorrow we keep moving." Tara looked at him, and for the first time she smiled. Small, tired, but real. It lasted only a second before her eyes closed. Jack sat beside her, watching the cave entrance. He didn't. The cave was dark and quiet, but Jack didn't let his guard down. He sat near the entrance, holding a sharp stick in one hand. Listening to every sound outside, Tara was resting deeper in the cave, wrapped in his blanket. Her fever had gone down a little, but her body was still weak. She needed more time to heal, more rest. But time was something they didn't have. Jack's mind kept going back to her words from before. "They take girls." It haunted him. He didn't know who they were, but if they were close, Tara wasn't safe. He wasn't safe either. Outside, the jungle was too still. The usual sounds of birds and insects had faded. That meant something was moving through the trees, something big, something that made the smaller creatures go silent. He stood slowly and peeked outside the cave, careful not to make noise. At first he saw nothing, only leaves swaying and thick mist. But then he spotted them. 3 tall figures in dark armor moving between the trees. They were fast, silent, and clearly not from this planet. They carried weapons and scanning devices, searching, hunting. One of them bent down and picked up a broken vine, inspecting it like a tracker. Then he pointed in the direction of the cave. Jack stepped back quickly, heart pounding. They were coming. And if they found the cave, they'd find Tara. She was too weak to run, too weak to even stand. He looked at her and felt a rush of anger rise in his chest. They weren't going to take her, not while he was alive. He grabbed a few stones and started setting traps at the cave's entrance. He made noise in the other direction, throwing a rock far into the jungle so it would lead them away. Minutes passed slowly. Then Jack heard heavy footsteps right outside. He held his breath, watching through a small gap in the vines. One of the hunters appeared, his face hidden behind a black mask. He had a scanner in his hand, glowing red. The man paused, turning his head slowly as if sensing something. "Jack, gripped his weapon tighter, ready to fight if he had to, but then a howl echoed far in the jungle. The hunter's head snapped up. Another signal, perhaps, or maybe one of their team calling. Whatever it was, it pulled them away. One by one, the figures vanished into the mist again. Jack waited a long time before moving. Even when the jungle sounds returned, he stayed silent, only breathing once. The danger passed. He went back to Tara, who was still asleep, and sat beside her. He brushed a hand gently over her forehead. Her skin was cool again and her breathing calm. She had no idea how close they had come to being caught, or worse. When she finally woke up, hours later, Jack told her softly. They were here. Her eyes widened, fear returning to her face. She tried to sit up but winced in pain. We go? She whispered. Jack nodded. Soon. But we have to be careful, they're tracking us. She looked down at her leg, then at him. Slow. Jack shook his head. You're not a problem, you're not a burden. I'll carry you as far as I need to. She looked like she wanted to argue, but instead she nodded slowly. Thank you. That night, Jack moved them deeper into the jungle. He found a thick tree with large roots and they hid under it while resting. He didn't sleep. Not even for a second. He watched over her like a guard, every sense alert. In the middle of the night, Tara suddenly woke up and whispered, Jack. He turned to her quickly. What is it? She pointed past him, her eyes wide with fear. Jack turned and froze. In the distance, glowing eyes were staring at them. Not human, not friendly. Slowly, a creature stepped into view. Tall and thin with sharp claws and rough gray skin, it sniffed the air, then growled. Jack knew instantly it wasn't one of the armored hunters. This was something else. A jungle predator. One that had found their scent. Ali. Jack grabbed a flaming stick from their small fire and stood in front of Tara. Stay behind me, he whispered. The creature snarled and stepped closer, but stopped at the fire. It hissed at the flame. Stepping back a little, Jack used that chance. He waved the fire stick, making the flames grow. The creature backed off slowly, watching him with glowing yellow eyes. Then, with a final snarl, it turned and ran into the trees. Tara let out a soft breath of relief. Her hands trembled as she reached for him. Safe? She asked. For now, Jack replied, but his voice was tight. He knew more danger would come. The hunters were out there. The jungle was full of beasts and Tara could barely stand. But he had made a promise. And he wasn't going to break it. He looked at the stars through the branches above. If someone's listening, he whispered. If any ship is nearby, please find us. Then he looked down at Tara, who had fallen asleep again, safe for now under the glowing light of the fire. Jack wasn't a hero. He was just a man who refused to leave someone behind. And no matter what came next, rain, hunters, beasts, he would protect her until his last breath. The rain started just before sunrise, cold and heavy. It soaked the jungle in minutes. Jack pulled his jacket tighter around Tara, who was shivering in his arms. He had made a small shelter under the thick roots of a fallen tree, but it was no match for the storm. Water dripped from every branch. Thunder rolled in the sky, and the ground turned into mud. Jack looked down at Tara, her face pale again. Her body was weak and cold, and her breath came in short, tired gasps. He needed to move, fast. She wouldn't last long like this. Not in the rain, not with her strength fading again. Jack looked up at the cliffs in the distance. He remembered passing a broken satellite dish there when he first crashed. Maybe it still worked. Maybe he could send a signal. It was the only chance they had left. He adjusted the straps of his pack, carefully wrapped Tara in a dry cloth and lifted her into his arms once again. The climb wasn't easy. The path was slippery and filled with roots and sharp rocks. Jack's boots sank in the mud with every step. His arms burned from carrying her, but he didn't stop. Tara didn't speak, her head resting against his shoulder. Her body was hot again. The fever was coming back. He moved faster, pushing through thick leaves, his shirt soaked, the cold wind biting at his skin. The jungle around them was full of sound. The rain, the thunder, the distant growls of wild beasts. But none of that mattered. He had only one goal. Reach the dish, send a signal, get help. Finally, after what felt like hours, he reached the base of the cliff. It was steep, but there was a narrow path that wound up the side. Jack took a deep breath and began to climb, one careful step at a time. Every few steps, he looked down to make sure Tara was still breathing. Her hand twitched slightly, her eyes barely open. "Stay with me," he whispered. "We're almost there." At the top, he found the dish, rusted and broken, but still standing. He laid Tara down gently under a flat rock, shielding her from the rain. Then he went to work. He opened a panel on the side of the dish and found the wires inside mostly intact. He pulled out a tool from his belt and started connecting wires, rerouting, power adjusting the old screen on his portable device. Sparks flew once, then the screen lit up, weak but working. Jack didn't waste time. He typed out a short message. "Crashed, 2 survivors, need evac." He sent it on all available channels, hoping someone, anyone, would hear it. Then he ran back to Tara. Her body was still, her lips slightly blue. "No, no, no," he muttered. He pulled her close and held her tightly. "You're not leaving me now, not after all this." He searched through his bag for something, anything, to help. He found an emergency heat pack and broke it open. Placing it against her chest, he gave her a few drops of water, then some of the jungle herbs he had crushed the day before. She didn't respond, but her chest kept moving, barely. The rain started to slow, but dark clouds still filled the sky. Jack stayed beside her, holding her hand, whispering stories, anything to keep her mind awake. Suddenly a sound echoed through the clouds. Jack looked up, heart racing. A ship, a real ship, broke through the mist, lights blinking, engines humming. It was coming closer. He stood and waved both arms, yelling, "Down here, please." The ship slowed, circling above the cliff. Then it lowered, wind blowing trees and shaking the ground as it landed near the dish. The ramp opened, and 2 soldiers in rescue uniforms ran out. One of them pointed at Jack. "Are you the one who sent the signal?" Jack nodded. "She's the one who needs help." The medics rushed to Tara and began checking her vitals. Jack stood back, watching with wide eyes. One of the medics looked up and said, "She's still alive. Just barely. You got her just in time." Jack dropped to his knees, all strength gone. He had done it. He had saved her. They placed Tara gently on a stretcher and carried her into the ship. Jack followed slowly, his body heavy, his clothes soaked, but his heart full of something warm. As the ship lifted off, he sat beside her, holding her hand once more. Her eyes opened slightly, her lips moved. "Jack," she whispered. "Thank you." He smiled, wiped a tear from his cheek, and nodded. "You're safe now, Tara. You're going to be okay." Outside the window, the jungle disappeared into clouds. The danger was behind them. But for Jack, something had changed. He hadn't just rescued an alien girl. He had found something deeper, a reason to fight, a life worth saving, and maybe, just maybe, a bond that would last forever. The ship flew high above the jungle, leaving the storm and danger behind. Jack sat in the medical room, still holding Tara's hand. Her skin was cold, her body wrapped in warm blankets. Wires were connected to her arms, and a machine beeped softly beside her. The medics worked quietly, checking her pulse, giving her medicine through small tubes. Jack watched every movement, afraid to blink, afraid she might slip away if he looked away for even a second. He had carried her for so long through mud, rain, and danger. Now she was here, surrounded by real help. But he still felt helpless. He couldn't fight the fever with his hands. He couldn't scare away death like he did the jungle beasts. He could only sit and wait, and that was harder than any battle. One of the medics, a tall woman with calm eyes, came over to him and said, "You did well. She's strong. She just needs time and rest." Jack nodded, but he didn't speak. He looked at Tara's face. Her lips were dry, and her cheeks were still pale, but she was breathing steadily. That gave him hope. The ship's pilot spoke over the comm. "We'll reach the station in 20 minutes. Medical bay will be ready." Jack leaned back, but he didn't let go of Tara's hand. He couldn't. Her fingers were so small in his, but her grip had always felt strong even when she was weak. He remembered the first time she said his name, the first time she smiled, the way she looked at him with trust. That trust now felt like a promise he had to keep. Tara stirred a little, her fingers twitching. Jack leaned closer. "Tara, it's me, Jack." She didn't open her eyes, but a tiny sound left her lips. He couldn't understand the word, but it was enough. She was still fighting, still alive. And that meant everything. When they landed at the space station, the ship shook lightly, doors opened and medical workers rushed in with a floating stretcher. They gently lifted Tara onto it and began moving her out. Jack followed closely, ignoring the pain in his legs and the weight in his chest. They moved, through clean white hallways, bright lights above, machines buzzing softly. Jack had never been to a place like this. It was so different from the jungle, quiet and safe. But he still felt like danger was close. Inside the station's med bay, they placed Tara in a recovery pod. The pod slowly closed around her, a soft blue light glowing from inside. The lead doctor looked at Jack and said, "She's stable now, her body is healing. You did the right thing bringing her here." Jack let out a shaky breath and finally sat down in a chair nearby. His body felt like it could collapse, but his mind was still spinning. A few hours passed, and Jack didn't leave the room. He sat quietly thinking about everything, the snake bite, the rain, the hunters, the glowing eyes in the dark, and the fear in Tara's voice when she said they took girls. It haunted him. He didn't know who they were, but he knew they wouldn't stop. They might be looking for her still, tracking her, maybe even tracking him now too. Later, a security officer came to him. "We picked up a strange ship in the jungle. They left when we arrived, but it looked like a slaver patrol." Jack's heart sank. "Slavers?" he asked. The officer nodded. "They take young aliens and sell them off, especially rare ones. The girl, she might have escaped from one of their ships." Jack clenched his fists. The thought of someone hurting Tara made his blood boil. "She's not going back," he said, his voice sharp. "Not ever." The officer gave him a nod of respect. "She's lucky you found her. Most wouldn't have risked their life for someone like her." Jack looked toward the recovery pod. "I didn't save her because she's rare. I saved her because..." She looked at me like I was the only person who didn't want to hurt her. That night, Jack stayed beside the pod again. A nurse offered him food, water, even a place to sleep. But he refused. He couldn't sleep until she opened her eyes again. He needed to hear her voice, even just one word. That would be enough to tell him she was going to be okay. Hours later, when the med bay was quiet, the pod made a soft sound. Jack sat up straight. The pod lid lifted slowly and warm air escaped. Tara's eyes opened slowly and carefully. She blinked at the light, confused at first. Then her eyes moved, searching the room. And when they landed on Jack, her whole body relaxed. He stepped closer, careful not to scare her. "Hey, it's okay, you're safe now." She stared at him, then whispered, "Jack." He smiled, and this time tears came to his eyes. "I'm here, Tara, I never left." She tried to sit up, but her body was still too weak. He helped her gently, holding her shoulders as she leaned against him. Her hand reached for his and squeezed it just like before, but this time stronger. "You save me?" she whispered. Jack nodded. "Yeah, I did, but you saved me too, Tara." Her head tilted slightly, confused. "How?" He smiled, brushing her hair back. "You gave me a reason to fight, to keep going. I didn't want to be a hero. I just didn't want to lose you." Tara smiled, a real one this time, soft and full of warmth. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for the first time since the crash, Jack felt peace. He didn't know what would come next, whether she'd stay with him or go back to her people, but in that moment nothing else mattered. She was alive, she was safe, and she was with him, and that was enough. The station lights were soft, glowing blue and white, everything clean and calm. Jack sat beside Tara's bed, holding her hand gently. It had been 3 days since they arrived, and every day she had gotten a little better. She could now sit up without help. She had started eating soft food, and her voice was stronger. Jack stayed by her side the whole time, only leaving when the doctors forced him to rest for a few hours. even. Then he slept in a chair just outside the room. Tara was different now. She wasn't scared all the time like before. Her eyes didn't dart around the room and she didn't flinch when someone came close. She laughed once when Jack told her a story about Earth food. Her laugh was soft and light, like music. It made Jack smile in a way he hadn't in a long time. That morning, Tara sat up and looked out the window of the station. Below them was the green jungle where she almost died. It looked peaceful from up here. She stared at it for a long time. Then she turned to Jack and said, "Thank you." He smiled. "You've already said that." She shook her head. "Not just for saving me, for staying." Jack didn't know what to say to that. He felt something heavy in his chest, like her words reached deep inside him. "I wasn't going to leave you, Tara," he said softly. "Not then, not now." She reached for his hand, again holding it tightly. "I believe you," she whispered. Later, the head officer of the station came to see them. She was a tall human woman named Commander Elise. She wore a sharp uniform and had a strong voice. "We've been investigating the jungle," she said. "The slaver ship is gone, but their trail leads far. We think they've been taking alien girls from nearby villages." Tara's face turned pale. Jack leaned closer to her. "She escaped from them," he said. "They'll come back," Commander Elise nodded. "That's why we need to move her somewhere safe, a protected colony far from here, with guards, clean housing, and medical care." Tara looked at Jack quickly. "You come too?" she asked. Jack looked at Elise, who frowned slightly. "That colony is for refugees, not soldiers," she said. "Jack, your report shows you were a pilot. Your mission is over now. You'll be sent back to Earth where you belong." Tara's face dropped. Her hand gripped Jack's arm like she didn't want to let go. Jack's mind raced. He hadn't thought about what came next. All he knew was he didn't want to leave her, not after everything they went through together. He looked at Commander Elise and asked, "Can I stay? I'm not asking for a job, just a place near her." Elise sighed and looked at Tara, who was staring up at her with wide, hopeful eyes. "We don't usually make exceptions," Elise said, "but I'll see what I can do." Then she walked out, leaving them in silence. Tara turned to Jack. "If you go, I'll be alone again." Jack shook his head. "I'm not going anywhere." That evening, Tara stood for the first time with Jack's help. She wobbled at first, her legs still weak, but she smiled proudly. "See?" she said. "Stronger now." Jack laughed. "You were always strong." They walked slowly around the room, her arm wrapped around his. It felt like a small victory, but to both of them, it was everything. The next day, Commander Elise returned with news. "We've decided to assign Jack as your guardian while you recover. It's not permanent, but it gives you both more time. You'll be moved together to a safe zone." Tara jumped up and hugged Jack, surprising him. She had never hugged him before, and her arms around him felt warm and full of emotion. "Thank you," she whispered again, "for not letting go." Their new home was small but peaceful, a quiet part of the station built for healing and safety. Jack and Tara had separate rooms, but she always came to sit near him. They ate meals together, talked more, and she learned new words in English every day. Jack helped her, and sometimes when she made mistakes, she'd laugh and try again. He never corrected her harshly, only smiled and encouraged her. One night, they sat near the window watching stars blink in the dark sky. Tara looked at Jack and said, "When I met you, I thought you would run. Most do when they see me." Jack turned to her surprised. "Why?" She looked down at her hands. "Because I'm different. Not human, not strong, not important." Jack leaned closer. "Tara, you're more important than you think. You're brave, kind, and you didn't give up. That makes you strong." She looked up at him, her eyes full of light. "Do you think I'll be safe now?" Jack nodded. "As long as I'm here, you will be." She smiled, leaned her head on his shoulder, and whispered, "Then I don't want you to leave." Jack placed his hand gently on hers. "I won't," he said. Not now, not ever. And for the first time in a long time, Tara closed her eyes peacefully, knowing someone truly meant it. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Jack, not just her rescuer, but her protector, her friend, and maybe something more. She had almost died in the jungle, but she had found something far more rare. A human who cared, a human who stayed, a human who saw her not as alien, but as someone worth saving, and someone worth staying for.